Hi, my name is Hector. I'm a senior studying neuroscience at Columbia University. I work part-time at the Graduate School of Social Work, doing research. And some of my passions are boxing, working out, playing football, basketball, and art. And while things may seem like things are on the up and up for me, I actually have a secret to tell you guys. I flunked out of college not once, but twice. You see, when I was graduating high school, I really didn't have any motivation, any direction, any vision, and I really didn't anticipate on going to college. But as graduation came closer and closer, I began to notice that a lot of my friends were going on to college, and they were excited because they were about to embark on this new journey in their life, and I wasn't. So I decided to change that and made a last-minute scramble and applied to a bunch of colleges in the area that just so happened to entertain my 2.1 GPA and low SAT scores. And fortunately, by God's intervention, by divine intervention, I managed to get into this college. And I was excited because at that point, I felt like I wasn't going to be a failure. But I had no idea what I was going to do. Since I didn't know what I was going to do, I decided to do what my dad wanted me to do his whole life. I decided to become an engineer. And I went through that first semester, and I took Intro to Engineering and Computer Networking, and I even took a writing class, but I was miserable. And by the second semester, I grew a resentment towards my dad, and that led to a decrease in my academic performance, and before you know it, I had flunked out of college. Just like that, in a blink of an instant, I had dwindled away all of the money that my parents saved their entire life for my college education. So I decided to go to the financial aid office, and I spoke to the receptionist. She pulled up my grades, and she read out loud, this is what she told me. She said, 1.9 GPA, 1.9 GPA? You're not gonna be able to get a scholarship anywhere, let alone go to school next semester. And I remember walking away from there feeling angry, and I felt defeated. But eventually, as time passed on, that anger turned into a desire. It turned into a desire to never let anybody talk down on me again. And I didn't. I didn't let anybody talk down on me again. Until I decided to go to community college. This time around, things were different. I began working in the corporate world. I finally felt like I was making my own decisions instead of letting my father make decisions for me. I decided I was going to take classes in accounting because accountants make a lot of money, and, well, I wanted to make a lot of money too. Things went perfectly fine that first semester, and I managed to excel until I began taking difficult classes. I took marketing, and I failed. I failed again. So I decided to do what any young person without direction would do. I took the class again and failed again. I realized I wasn't passionate enough about it. So I felt like I wasn't good enough. I felt like I wasn't smart enough. I felt like I couldn't do anything right. So I decided to switch all of my energy and focus into something that I was doing right in my life, my career. So I began to work full-time, and life became routine until one day at work changed my life forever. I'd been coming back into work on a hot summer day after lunch break when I sat down and I felt this overwhelming rush of anxiety take over my body, and my nerves felt like they were on fire. My heart was beating out of my chest. I was scared. My coworkers saw the look in my eye, and they called the ambulance immediately, and within minutes I had been transported to the local emergency room. And as I laid in that gurney that day, I remember feeling so scared, so vulnerable. For the first time in my life, I didn't know what was going on with me, and I felt my mortality. I remember lying down over there, and the doctor came and approached me, and he said, "Hector, I ran a whole slew of tests, but there's nothing wrong with you." And I said, "What do you mean there's nothing wrong with you?" He said, there's nothing wrong with you. It's probably a case of anxiety. You probably had an anxiety or panic attack. So I went away, not taking no for an answer. And I continued to work, but as I continued to work, as time progressed, I began to feel progressively worse. I began to get persistent migraines. I began to get even worse neurological damage. I had vertigo. I was stumbling. I felt like I was leaning sideways as I was walking. And within that next year and a half, I had to take myself out of work and admit myself into the ER 8 more times, seeing the same doctor 8 times. And every single time, he would look at me and he would say, "There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing I can do with you. But surely there has to be something wrong with you." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, I really can't find anything wrong with you. My options are exhausted, but if you want, I can run one last test." He said, "Hector, we're going to have to do a spinal tap on you." And I looked at him, and I just got this image of that huge needle going down my spine. And I said, "No, thanks. I'm good. I'd rather take my chances with the unknown." And I remember as I walked away from that situation, the doctor approached me, and he said, "Well, if you're not willing to do that, at least let me recommend you to one of my colleagues for your heart palpitations. He's one of the best cardiologists in the nation." So I did that because at that point I felt demoralized. I felt like I didn't have any control over my life. So I visited him, and within 3 doctor's visits, he wound up finding the culprit of what was ailing me the whole time. Vitamin B12 deficiency. Vitamin B12 deficiency. So you mean to tell me if I would have taken a multivitamin, a chewable, I would have been perfectly fine. And with that being said, it gave me hope. It made me feel like I was back in control of my life again. I began to flourish in every single aspect of my life. I began to improve physically, mentally, emotionally, and I developed a relationship with this physician. And inspired by his humility, I began to ask him questions about his journey as a doctor. And the more that I asked him questions, the more that I began to realize that I too wanted to sacrifice my life for a life of service the way he did. And so I did. I decided I was going to go back into school again, this time with drive, with vision, with purpose. And I believed so much in becoming a doctor that I decided to leave my job so that I can pursue it full time. I remember going back into school and choosing to get that biology degree. I remember all those times that I had the 2.3 GPA, the 1.9 from the other college. And when I finally dropped out, I had a 2.3. And I remember using that as motivation to push myself hard to get the grades that I knew I could achieve, to get the scholarships that I was once denied, and to get the opportunities that I never had. And I remember I did so well. I managed to maintain high grades in all my classes, and I was invited into the Honors Society because of my achievements. And I remember thinking to myself that school was about to end. What was I going to do with my life next? I knew if I wanted to go further on, I was going to have to really push myself. And given my stellar history of academic performance, my 1.9 GPA, my 2.3, my 2.1, I knew if I wanted to become a surgeon, I was going to have to go to one of the most competitive schools in the nation. And surprisingly, I applied, and surprisingly, I was accepted. And 2 years later, I'm now proud to say that I'm in my senior year, about to complete my neuroscience degree at Columbia University. And hopefully within the next 2 years, I'll be going on to medical school. I'll be going on my way to medical school because I want to give those patients that were just as hopeless as me in the past what that doctor gave to me. That was hope. That was hope. And looking back on those experiences, I realized that we almost fall before we get up. And when I wasn't pursuing my passions, I failed. When I wasn't thinking for myself and allowing others to think for me, I failed. And the fact of the matter is that we're all not that much different from one another. We're all going to fail at some point in time, but what matters is how you react to it. And looking back on that time, there's not much different from the Hector back then and the Hector now, except I realized that there was never anything wrong with me to begin. Thank you.